All right, good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you all to the next edition of the Holland Land Office Museum's guest speaker series. This is something we started about 6 years ago now, and we're still going strong. So I want to thank you all for coming out. There was a slight change to the program, which unfortunately I could not get out to everyone before all the advertising went out, so I apologize. But President Lincoln will not be arriving tonight, so it will be only General Grant, but he has plenty to tell us. So tonight's speaker is Ed Brodbeck, who from now on will be General Grant. So address him as such, because that's the only thing he'll respond to from here on out. So I want to thank you all for coming, and quick note, we received a grant to help fund this program from the DEC program through New York State, administered by GOER, so I want to give them a special shout out for allowing us to put this on. So without further ado, General, the floor is yours.
Oh, good evening. Well, I'm going to trust somebody to open this up because that's my notes and from the last year of the war, which I wrote a report on. I took them from the National Archives, so I'm going to let you open that up. There we go. You don't even know I have these.
Okay. Now my fingerprints are all over it.
Okay. I am looking for my glasses. Oh well. 1864. Yeah, 1865. Last year of the Civil War. I've already been promoted to Lieutenant General, commanding both armies, all armies of the Union. Excuse me. Thanks. What I did with them, I have no idea. Thanks to my wife, Patty.
Thank you.
I don't know what we're going to start out 1864 with about 4 different campaigns. Up until this point, Confederate forces have moved against us so many times, stifling a lot of our efforts. So this time, we're going to kick off 1864. The spring campaign, General William Tecumseh Sherman is going to be moving toward Atlanta in Georgia. Railroad center, manufacturing center, one of the important hubs of the Confederacy. Union General Frank Sigel is going to be in the Shenandoah Valley. This is Virginia's and the Confederacy's breadbasket. It's where a lot of the farming goes on. General Benjamin Butler is going to be on the peninsula, threatening Richmond, the capital of the Confederacy, Richmond itself. Now, I've already made up my mind that upon being appointed Lieutenant General, I wasn't going to sit this out in Washington. I decided to go with commander of the Army of the Potomac, George Gordon Meade. And we were going to tackle General Robert E. Lee and the Army of Northern Virginia. So consequently, a big contingency of supply wagons, a traveling Army Corps of Engineers, a traveling medical corps, not to mention artillery. We depart from Culpeper, Virginia, May 4th. Cross the Rapidan River. Unbeknownst to us, we're going to meet General Lee and the Army of Northern Virginia in a place that's fairly familiar to us from just 1 year previous, near a place called Chancellorsville, where Union General Joseph Hooker suffered a pretty bad defeat. Our plan is to go down two main roads on our way to Richmond. Well, of course, General Lee, they have a very, very good spy system. He's anticipated this move already. And on our treks down the Orange Plank Road and Orange Turnpike, we discover Confederate forces on both our routes. The only alternative is to fight right there. This is a strange battle. The area is called the Wilderness, and it's not called that for nothing. A lot of forest, so we're going to be forced to fight not on the roadways. We're going to have to take to the forest and the brushlands. We're trying to move. You probably see photographs of troop movements and all lined up in it. Not so in this case. This would be trying to move troops through an area like this. Well, plenty of places for ambush. The Confederates know this territory backwards and forwards. And the very first day of battle, May 5th, we're really taxed to the max to try to get through. That day ends in a stalemate. Terrible fighting. Many forest fires get started by the firing of weapons. Artillery use in this part of the almost useless. Almost useless. Trying to fight in a forest with trees, you're not going to get a clear field of fire anywhere. Brush fires start all over the place. Many men perish. Many wounded are just caught in this terrible, terrible inferno. Both armies dig in. We know we're going to have another fight the next day. Early on the 6th, both armies are at it again. We start to make some progress this time. General Lee's troop disbursement it's getting harder and harder for him to control us until help comes in the form Confederate General James Longstreet comes in from Leesburg, Virginia. the tide is almost going to get turned right there. Unfortunately for them, General Longstreet is accidentally wounded by his own troops, putting him out of commission. Interestingly enough, he's headed just about the same place where Confederate General Andrew Jackson met his demise, around Chancellorsville, just about a year earlier. In this battle, I discover a dear friend of mine is killed. Alexander Hayes, who was my roommate and a good friend of mine from my West Point years. Casualties? Extreme. The Union, for us, 17,000 killed, wounded, or missing. Confederate losses, quite a bit less. It's their country. It's their playground. 8,000. Well, it's at this junction probably everybody is expecting, well, we've met them for 2 days, we've been stymied, maybe we're going to be going back across the Rapidan River like so many times before. Not this time. On the evening of May 7th, I give the troops the word, we're still heading south. We're still heading toward Richmond. We still have control of a road by the name of Brock Road. We're going to be heading down to Spotsylvania Courthouse area. General Lee has already anticipated this move. He's already got his troops moving down through makeshift roads toward the courthouse area. Now, on our way down, we're going to be harassed by J.E.B. Stewart's cavalry incessantly, all the way down. Troops are elated when they find this out. I mean, for so long, everybody's been so disappointed that we suffer disappointment, back we go, tail between our legs. General Meade and myself decide it's not happening anymore. Well, Union General Phil Sheridan's cavalry helps clear the way for us. They're keeping J.E.B. Stewart off our backs. Doing a darn good job of it. Cavalry action at Laurel Hill, Virginia, against Confederate cavalry and infantry. General George Meade comes upon Phil Sheridan's troops at a place called Todd's Tavern, resting. I mean, they've been wrestling and fighting Jeb Stuart's cavalry for the past 2 days now. And he's quite furious. What is this? Lounging about? Well, of course, he's angry, but so is Phil Sheridan. As a matter of fact, he's so angry, he makes a proclamation that, by gosh, enough of this, we're getting up, we'll get out of your way. Now what we're going to do is just pursue Jeb Stuart until we catch him at Richmond or some other time. Makes this outrageous claim. Now I hear of this later in camp. General Meade comes and says, do you know what that Phil Sheridan has said? He lays out the whole plan to me. And I'm so impressed. And I said, did he really say that? Well, I think he should do it. And so off General Sheridan goes. Well, myself and General Meade are going to have, General Hancock, we're going to have enough to think about in the next few days. General Lee's moved his army in position around Spotsylvania Courthouse in a very strange formation. Trying to explain this, it's an elongated affair. It goes up, loops around into a point. We gave it the nickname the Mule Shoe. The defenses they set up are unbelievable. You'll be hearing a lot about that during the discussion. How to attack it. Some incidents that occur. May 9th, while getting Union artillery set up, one of our premier generals is killed. I'm not sure if you've heard this story, but John Sedgwick. Now, Uncle John was, that's what his troops called him. Very personable. Liked to oversee things himself. Kind of like somebody else I know. He's helping direct setting up artillery at one part of the line. And he's looking things over. Some of his troops are telling him, well, there's Confederate mini balls whizzing by every once in a while. Some of his troops are ducking and says, oh my goodness, what is this? You're ducking and dodging, and they couldn't hit an elephant from here. Whereupon, in the next few seconds, he's struck and killed. So, how to attack these monstrous defenses? A commander by the name of, well, you'll see a lot to do with him out here if you look around. You've probably heard the name Emory Upton before, huh? Hometown boy, huh? Comes up with a plan of attack that's really different. Just good work. And that is, have 12 separate regiments You're gonna line up, instead of your basic big, long line, regiment, 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 regiment. 3 other regiments in reserve. In other words, it's going to be this big, blunt force kind of a thing. The troops are going to be ordered to load and not to cap their muskets. They're going to go in without firing. No. Want to have a little fun? Anybody ever get a chance to handle a Civil War piece? Have a volunteer? Anybody, come on. All right, good. Okay, first of all, we're going to make it official. Okay? Okay, we're going to string this on it. Okay, this is off to your right. You get around ya? Oh, here we go. Ah, you got it. Okay, so, I'm going to stand right beside you here. There's your piece. Now to load this thing, right between your feet like this. Now, go through this with you. You would take a paper cartridge. Oh. You'd be so kind as to start passing this around. Yeah, this is what the bullets and the cap look like. That's what they hurt. They do multitudes of damage. Anyway, one would take your cartridge, you tear it open, insert it in the barrel, push the ball down a little bit. Okay, that's in the barrel. Yep, remove your ramrod. Yep. Out. That end goes down the barrel. Okay. Yeah. Give it a few taps. Seat the bullet. Mucho importante. Replace the ramrod.
Always.
Okay. Now it's going to go up shoulder height. Yeah. Like so. Yeah. Now you have to cap it, which means you're going to take one of these little doodads here. Copper cap. The thing is filled with fulminate of mercury. Once the hammer is drawn back, the cap is seated, then you're ready to go. The order is given, at the ready, aim, fire. And guess what? The whole rigmarole starts all over again. Now, you imagine this happening in ranks of men, all, you know, 2 ranks, one behind the other, all this confusion. Strange things would happen. You could forget to remove your ramrod, pull up, cap the thing off, orders given to fire, twang, off goes your ramrod. Better pick up another piece and start all over again. Or, in the confusion of battle, you may forget to put a percussion cap on. Think you had fired, roll it again. Sometimes muskets were found on the battlefield, 7 or 8 cartridges rammed up in the barrel, never fired a shot. Things could get hellish out there. Anyway, a quick, thank you. Quick demonstration. Afterward, anyone's welcome to, you know, you usually don't get a chance to handle these pieces or anything when you see them in cases or anything like that. If you want to take a hold of it, go right ahead, examine any of the equipment, more than welcome. The only thing I ask is, don't pull back the hammer and don't put your finger on the trigger. I think you'll be surprised at how much this thing weighs. Anyway, I brought that up because, okay, now Upton's men are ready. They're going to go across an expanse of ground. Well, let's see, I was there. I was there at the spot, looking across, probably about the length of 2 football fields, about 200 yards. At the double quick. Probably one of the reasons he had them load and not cap. Somebody trips. They drive the Confederate pickets in. Their initial successes are quite good. This starts early in the morning. By mid-afternoon, Confederate forces are called up. General Lee is calling in reserve troops from all over the place to help push them out. Do take a lot of Confederate prisoners though, but it's pretty much all for naught. Battle wraps up about 5, 6 in the afternoon. Well, next day we'll try again. May 11th, it's raining like the dickens. And it keeps right on raining. It lets up some, so battle's back on for May 12th. Now, General Meade and myself would like that idea that Mr. Upton, Emory has had so much, decided to try it again. Only this time with 2 whole corps of our army. Hancock's 2nd Corps and Horatio Wright's 6th Corps. Again, initial successes are wonderful. an incident happens at the outset of the battle, which kind of correlates with the musket thing. There's a contingency of General Jackson's troops, Stonewall Jackson's troops, that are on duty that morning. They're some of the first to see the Union troops coming across. And the word is, we better prepare, boys, we're gonna have blood for supper. Grab their muskets off the stacks, line up against with their defenses, orders given, at the ready, aim. Pop, 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 pop. It's been raining. Muskets are stacked, muzzle up. And powder sweat. So you've got a whole contingency of troops here. They're only about 50 yards away now. Everybody's trying furiously to get patches down their guns and clean them out and reload them. A little bit of mayhem there for you. Well, like I said, successes in the early going are good. Now General Lee is doing the same thing. Yeah. General Lee comes out personally to lead troops into battle. His troops, please lead, General Lee to the rear, to the rear. We got this, we got this. Fighting rages on approximately 22 hours. Even past midnight, they're still at it. Confederates in their endeavors to push us out. Toward morning, there's troops on both sides, fighting so close on either side of the Confederate defenses at a spot aptly named the Bloody Angle. No side gaining the advantage at any time. It's a horrible mess. Horrible mess. Club musket, bayonet are used frequently. Brutal. Most everybody taking a look at that musket ball and yeah? Lead. You're hit with one of these things, body wound, or if it breaks the bone, probably that limb is coming off. These things do that much damage. Civil War was not so civil. Well, no war is. After the battle, they discover a tree about 22 inches in circumference, cut right in half by artillery fire and musket fire. Cut right in half. If I'm not mistaken, it's still preserved someplace down south. Some museum or something has it. They still have the Spotsylvania tree. Well, at the conclusion of this, this is where decided it isn't a real disappointment or anything. We're still where we are, and they are where they are. Whitewater, Washington, we're gonna fight it out on this line if it takes all summer. We're still not coming back. We're gonna find a way to keep pushing on. Let me see. Well, I'll get to that in a minute. So, now on May 13th and 14th, General Lee and his troops are busy forming another more formidable line. The next time we attack it, yeah, it definitely isn't going to be pretty. Their artillery fire is so devastating. Fire from their infantry. No unit gets any closer than 100 yards. Stymied, the whole thing. We're gonna go back, we're gonna dig in, wait to make a move. On the night of May 20th, 2 of our corps start slipping out of their entrenchments. We're gonna move. And so was General Lee. I said I was going to talk about a couple of different campaigns. Well, let's check in with General Sherman on his way down through Georgia, going to take the city of Atlanta. Right now, he's at Dallas area, not to be confused with Dallas, Texas, and Dallas, New Hope, Georgia area. This is just before he hits Kennesaw Mountain, down around Marietta. Making good progress. After battles at Ringgold, Dalton, Resaca, General Sherman's been using flanking movements, getting around Joe Johnston's army. Well, finally at Kennesaw Mountain, he makes a mistake. Decides to head-on attack up a big hill. Sounds like something I would do. Anyway, that's where we're at there. Now, getting closer and closer to Richmond all the time. General Lee and the Army moves to an area around the North Anna River, right near Richmond. I'm hoping to lure Lee out of position around Spotsylvania, where I deployed Winfield Scott Hancock's 2nd Corps to Bowling Green to threaten more of the Richmond-Fredericksburg railroads. Very important. We've always maintained for the internal strangulation and cutoff and winning this war, we have to concentrate on a few basic things. We have to get a hold of control of rivers, railroads, and the roadways. You can't move. Your supplies are cut off. Your troop supplies are cut off. Your ammunition supplies are cut off. Harder to fight. Well, General Lee doesn't bite. falls back to the south bank of the North Anna River. Both armies dig in. It's Lee's intention to protect the Virginia Central Railroad, which is an important link to the Shenandoah Valley, where all their farmland is. This is their breadbasket. It's been General Frank Sigel's job to create mayhem there, although he's lost to a smaller force of Confederate forces on May 15th at Newmarket. Oh, something I missed. In talk of Spotsylvania, remember I was talking about Phil Sheridan chasing after Jeb Stuart? Well, he does so. They end up chasing him just about to the outskirts of Richmond, where there's a big cavalry battle. Unfortunately for the Confederates, Jeb Stuart is mortally wounded at the Battle of Yellow Tavern, and General Lee loses another arm. He said when General Jackson was killed, "I've lost my right arm." Perhaps General Stuart is his left. Oh. On the nights of May 26th and May 27th, we begin to slip out of our entrenchments. We're going to converge at a place called Cold Harbor. Not one of my fondest memories, or many other folks for that matter. The evening of June 1st, element of new commander of the 6th Corps, Horatio Wright, penetrate Confederate defenses. Darkness brings a halt to the fighting. I'm hoping to deal a killing blow. I order Winfield Scott's Hancock 2nd Corps to come up as soon as possible. Doesn't arrive till late, so we'll have to put the attack off until the 3rd of June. On the eve of battle, one of my staff is making the rounds, checking the men's demeanor and checking to see if they're well supplied with ammunition and this and that and the other thing. He notices a strange thing. He notices men sitting around appearing to fix holes in their uniforms. My goodness, what's going on? Upon further inspection, he discovers that a lot of the men are sewing on cloth or paper name tags to the backs of their uniforms. They know what's coming. Lee and the Confederate Army are becoming masters at setting up defenses. And they set up some doozies this time. Using the natural flow of the ground, little hills, patches of forest, flat land where they can set up fields of artillery. They create some works that, how can I explain this? They're set up in kind of a sawtooth type pattern. Here. what that does on your frontal assault, it'll draw you in. And when it draws you in close enough, all they have to do is have some of their troops turn in an oblique. If you're close enough, they're firing right into your flanks. Bad piece of business. Unfortunately, a lot of commanders didn't do their homework, didn't recon the ground. June 3rd's fight is an utter, unequivocal disaster for us. Outgunned. We have the addition of Confederate General A.P. Hill's Corps, and General Breckinridge arrives from the Shenandoah Valley, where they've just taken care of France Eagle. Within the first 15 minutes, in the beginning of the attack, we lose approximately 5,000 killed, wounded, or missing. Confederate losses, hard to say. After our second attack of the day, which I ordered and painfully regret, our total casualties, 7,000 to 8,000 killed, wounded, or missing. Confederate losses, 1,500, possibly 2,000. In comparison, well, needless to say, President Lincoln is very disappointed, but still keeps faith in General Meade and myself and the other generals. I gain a little sobriquet. Mary Lincoln liked to call me this a lot. The Butcher. Well, that being regrettably said, on the night of June 12th, we move again. General Lee this time orders many of his troops to protect Richmond. They're keeping that blanket around Richmond. Strangely enough, at this point, we're only 12 miles away. And strange to say, about 2 years later, or earlier, during General McClellan's campaign of the peninsula, actually ended up only 10 to 12 miles away from Richmond. But this time we're sticking to it. My plan. We're actually going to try to steal a march on General Lee. And this is to cross the James River, capture the city of Petersburg, and the rail lines around it. On June 14th and 15th, the Army's Engineer Battalion, our Engineer Battalion, construct a pontoon bridge, 2,100 feet long, it's almost a mile, across the James River. 2,100 feet long, 13 feet wide, to move men, supplies, medical teams, infantry, artillery over. I guess it would be interesting to see if a span that long might hold together, possibly being susceptible to currents from the Chesapeake Bay area. Well, all goes well. After attacks on June 16th and 17th, we failed to take the city. Now General Lee is caught on to what's going on. He realizes we stole the march on him. Might have been able to take it on those first days. But looking at their defenses again, General Meade, General Wright, and myself, we take a good look and say, my goodness, look at this. What we don't realize though, is they're not manned that well. By now, General Lee's realized what's happened. He moves troops in from Richmond. They won't be needed there. General Butler's not going to be much of a threat. Well, after a while, decide to lay siege to the city. Endless frontal attack after endless frontal attack is going to do no good. What we're looking to do now is just keep extending rebel lines. We're getting more troops in its city point where we've settled in every day. We can force Lee to stretch out his army endlessly on both flanks. We're also keeping destruction of their railroads coming up from the Southland and the Westland in check. Keeping their supplies cut off. Thanks to a fellow by the name of Rufus Ingalls, all the citizenry, soldiery, headquarters at City Point is built, and in a year is transformed into one of the world's busiest ports. Wharves teem with many ships. It has a barracks, hospital, railroad yards, fields of tents, bakeries, a post office, and there's a nice little headquarters shed built for myself and my wife Julia and the kids. Field fortifications of unbelievable complexity are built by both sides. Extensive trenches, bomb-proofs, and artillery positions. What I mean by a bomb-proof? Doesn't really have anything to do with somebody shoving a bomb. This is a protection against artillery called mortars. You could dig a bomb-proof into any small hillside. You could actually construct one in the side of a trench. It's dug deep. This is to prevent any mortar rounds from destroying your troops. President Lincoln comes down to pay us a visit on June 22nd. He reviews the troops. We're very glad to see him. That's quite a procession. I even lend him my premier horse, Cincinnati. Well, I ride a little horse called Jeff Davis. It's quite a spectacle. President spends a couple of days and goes away happy enough that we're keeping up a siege. General Sherman's keeping the Confederates busy in Georgia. Also about June 22nd, a company of Pennsylvania soldiers, coal miners by trade, begin to dig and mine under Confederate works, hoping to explode a lot of gunpowder and blow a big opening through which our army can break through. I have to bring this up. Anybody like movies? Has anybody seen the movie Cold Mountain by any chance? Okay, you know, good movie. The explosion of the mine and special, unbelievable. But it's also a good movie. Kind of a love story about a Confederate after this horrible thing happens, trying to get back to his love in North Carolina. But it's a good study on life in the South, citizenry in the South. What they had to fear or put up with, not only from some of our people, but from some of their people. Like their roving bands of provost marshals and anyway, good story. If you get a chance, Cold Mountain, check it out. June 30th, the mine is exploded. The ensuing assault fails. Troops diverge off to the wrong places. Many are trapped in the big crater itself. If you remember that big scene where Union troops are scrambling to get out, and all the Confederates, they've regained their senses and they come back and ha-ha, gotcha. Now, after that, it's back to business as usual. Attack on more flanks, force Lee to extend his lines, keep trying to take more of the railroad supply lines. We succeed in some, fail in others. Now, at about this time, General Lee's feisty General Juba Early, having set some things to right in the Shenandoah Valley. He's a pain. With General Lee's approval, actually sets out to make a move on Washington, D.C. itself. On July 9th, however, at the Battle of Monocacy, not far from Frederick, Maryland. Anybody ever been down that way? Like seen the Antietam battlefield or down? Well, a smaller force of Union soldiers, about 6,000 under the command of Lew Wallace, stops General Early and his people long enough on their endeavor. Anyway, a little question about Lew Wallace. Name ring a bell? Shiloh, Wrong Way Wallace. Somebody named me one other thing he was noted for. It involves a movie, strangely enough. Okay, wait a minute. Come again?
He's the author of Ben-Hur.
That's it. Yeah, he's the author of the novel Ben-Hur. Yeah. One other crazy thing that he's, later on he ends up being interim governor of New Mexico, whereupon he comes in brief contact with a little strangely outlaw by the name of, Johnny. It's true. Little trivia. They hold early up for a day. Early gets to Washington, the defenses of Washington around July 11th. Seeing the defenses of the capital are too strong, calls off the attack. He's going back to the Shenandoah Valley. You can race all there. Now it's about time to check in with General Sherman on the Atlanta campaign. July 27th, his armies are beaten back at Kennesaw Mountain, the aforementioned Kennesaw Mountain, Georgia. Another catastrophe of attacking uphill against fortified positions. After this, he goes back to his flanking movements. By August 27th, he's besieging Atlanta. Well, everybody's watched Gone with the Wind, right? I know, yeah, of course. Now, Scarlett. Battle of Atlanta, all around Atlanta. Sherman's cavalry divisions are raising holy heck with railroad lines, railroads again. They get in, supply Atlanta. On September 2nd, Union troops enter. And Billy Sherman is pleased to wire Lincoln and Washington, Atlanta is ours, and fairly won. Back to business as usual around Petersburg. We're still attacking from time to time, making Lee extend his lines. More of the rebel supplies diminished by railroad raids. Morale's diminished for Southern troops. Desertions are abundant. The more depleted Confederates will be by 1864 into 1865, the more decisive our final hammer blow is going to be. October 19th, 1864, a defeat by General Sheridan of Jubal Early's troops at the Battle of Cedar Creek. This now makes Phil Sheridan the scourge of the Shenandoah Valley. evolves, not even a crow will be able to fly over the Shenandoah Valley. That won't have to forage for supplies. November 8th, President Lincoln wins re-election. Now, we come to a point, I honestly think, I believe Billy Sherman's victory at Atlanta had a lot to do with that. A lot to do with that. Because about this time, Northern feeling about the war was really had a bad ebb. Had a bad ebb. Northern Copperheads were just spewing terrible things of how bad the war was going and this and that and the other thing. It was like watching, it was kind of like watching CNN and MSNBC night and day. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. William Tecumseh gets a hold of me, takes a break from Atlanta. We discuss a plan that General Sherman has. Whilst our General George Thomas chases Confederate General John Bell's Hood army up into Tennessee, General Sherman wants to make a trek down through the rest of Georgia and capture one of the last seaports for the Confederacy at Savannah. Well, I'm a little, if he does this, he's going to have to forage, and his army's going to have to live off the land. It's not really a trek of all that far, but once he gets on his way, it's going to be hard to keep track of him, because communications between us and him are going to be, it's going to have to be by couriers or something. But finally, do it. Do it. Go for it. So in mid-November, goes out through multiple Confederate cities in Georgia, finally reaches Savannah, having the city surrender just before Christmas of 1864. Another telegram comes up to Washington offering the city of Savannah, would you please accept as a Christmas present. George Thomas has pursued John Bell Hood's armies into Tennessee. Precipitating Confederate losses at Franklin and Nashville, Tennessee. Now, General Sherman begins to work. He's now pushing Confederate General Joe Johnston's army, who's back in command again after surrendering his command to John Bell Hood who's now up in Tennessee. He's back in business again. Sherman's busy pushing Johnson's army back up through the Carolinas. They go. First is South Carolina. Oh, what they do to Columbia, South Carolina. Johnson has to keep retreating. He has no choice. Now, right about this time, there's got to be a hope. Lee senses it, Johnson senses it, that sometime in the near distant future, armies are going to have to link up if they have any chance at all on carrying on the war. Plus, there's other Union campaigns going on too. One around Mobile, Alabama, to capture one of their ports. A campaign in the Louisiana and Arkansas and the Red River. News is tightening. January 15th, 1865. Confederate stronghold Fort Fisher at Wilmington, North Carolina is taken. Also, in January of 1865, there's another war going on in the United States House of Representatives. Whereupon I'm going to ask you, if you haven't seen it already, do me a favor. The movie Lincoln. Anybody seen Lincoln? If you have, watch Lincoln. I'm not going to tell you exactly what to look for, but I think you'll be surprised at some of the things that come out about politics. Anyway. Yeah, enough said. That's part of your homework assignment. I'll be listening for your calls. Call me up and make sure that you've done it. Okay. January 31st, the 13th Amendment passes through the House. It's already passed through the Senate. It passed through the Senate the previous year. Why did they have such a tough time getting passed? Well, watch the movie. You'll find out. Lincoln finally meets with the Southern Peace Commissioners. What commissioners? Who go away disgruntled. The war will go on. But in March we have, in April, a myriad of things happen. The end may not be that far away. The end of March, Bill Sherman, the president, and myself meet. We all feel something is going to happen, such as General Lee will make a move to vacate Richmond, try to join forces with General Johnston. And within days, this is what happens. A savage battle happens as the Army in Northern Virginia breaks out of Petersburg. Now, April 2nd and 3rd begins its trek to hook up with Joe Johnson somewhere, probably in North Carolina. Richmond falls. Jeff Davis and company are on the run. President Lincoln comes to Petersburg and Richmond. He and I have a discussion about what may happen. President Lincoln is appalled by what he's seen at Petersburg, the devastation, the killing. We have a confab for about an hour, whereupon I told the president, you look so much older than you did when I first saw you, when I received my commission about a year ago. He professes that, yes, troubled times. We discuss what might be going on should the Confederates surrender. President Lincoln tells me doesn't want that many reprisals. If Jeff Davis and his people happen to get away and escape the country, I don't really care. We just want peace, settlement, surrender, and Confederate armies lay down their arms, go home, we're going to end the war. The 13th Amendment is passed, we're going to get this done with. We part company. Davis and his people were on the run. I'm going to have another little story about that in a second. Plagued by supply problems, desertions, fighting battles at Five Forks, Amelia Courthouse, Sailors Creek, everything going down Now Phil Sheridan's cavalry and infantry are actually ahead of Lee's army, whilst Meade and myself are close behind. Soon General Lee and I are communicating by letter about terms of surrender, which happens April 9th at Appomattox Courthouse at the home of Wilmer McLean. Anybody ever hear the story of this Wilmer McLean's house? You from? We hold the General Lee and I get together at the home of one Wilmer McLean and family. Wilmer McLean and family lived right in the vicinity of Manassas, or right in the vicinity of Bull Run, Virginia. And shortly after the first battle of Manassas was fought, they packed up the truck and then down south they go. So this is Wilmer McLean's house. So you could kind of have the dubious distinction of having the war begin in his front yard and pretty much end in his front parlor. At this, I have to mention a wonderful person on my staff who helped transcribe my hand scratching in terms of surrender. A wonderful person on my staff by the name of Ely Parker, up here in Seneca Indian. He'd been on my staff since Vicksburg. I think he joined my staff in Vicksburg. You find a lot of information on Emory Upton and Ely Parker out at the library out there if you take a look. Lee terms the terms very fair. Essentially, what it is, he and Confederate forces will surrender. They'll be paroled. His stipulation is, they'll lay down their arms, their colors, go home. It's done. I don't know if many people know this story. Actually, General Lee and I meet again on the 10th, the next day. And we discuss a few modeling things like, General Lee, if your troops receive the rations that we send them, and because their boys are starving and in bad shape, are you being treated okay? Nobody's raising a fuss with your boys, or but I broached the subject of General Lee. Since you're so revered in the South, would you think it would be possible that you could mayhaps talk to some other Confederate generals about a possible surrender? You have a lot of... Well, he turns me down, but he knows, as well as I do, that if everything isn't done and over with, all Confederate armies surrendered, he knows as well as I that this might turn out to be one of the biggest bouts of guerrilla warfare that would happen anywhere if there isn't complete unadulterated surrender by every Confederate army. But sticking to his guns, no pun intended. He says he'd be more than happy to do that, but he's not going to unless he first speaks with Jefferson Davis, who's on the run down through the South now. I say, yes, but General Davis is on the run down through South. He says, well, that's I guess we're at cross purposes. We let it go at that. And just proceed to talk about formal surrender procedures of the Confederate Army within a day or two. The day of formal surrender, Confederate arms are stacked. Any battle flags that are not pilfered, torn up for souvenirs, or burned are placed crossways on the stacked guns. General John B. Gordon commands the Confederate contingency. Joshua L. Chamberlain, the hero of Little Round Top in Gettysburg, is the host for the Union. At the final part of the ceremony, Chamberlain orders the rifle salute of arms. The Army of Northern Virginia passes. As they do, General Gordon, on his horse, dip in acknowledgement. Gordon shouts an order, and the Grays passing by also return the salute. Myself, I'm on my way back to Washington. Within days, President Lincoln will be assassinated. Some days later, Joe Johnson will surrender to General Sherman in North Carolina. Other Confederate commands will surrender too. Soon, U.S. armies will pass in review in Washington. Conspirators will be meted out justice. Oh, that's another good movie. The Conspirator, that put up Robert Redford. Watch it. Reconstruction and reconciliation begin. But will it ever end? Thank you. Any questions?
Toward the tail end, what type of troops were there? Just young people?
What's that?
Toward the tail end of the war, what kind of troops were they taking? It was 17,000 one battle.
Oh,
Were they getting
did
young
you-
people?
This brings up a point. The last year of the war, recruitment was going on for the Union Army, like gangbusters. Now the South, however, their manpower dwindling daily, monthly. This brings up another point. I, regrettably, started cutting back on prisoner exchanges. Regrettably, because this would mean that there's going to be a lot more Union boys spending time in horrendous camps like Andersonville, much longer than should be. But it was one of the only ways we could recruit and get troops to really deal a crushing blow. And I didn't want, I wanted the amount of prisoner exchanges cut down to the point where Lee and all the other armies would have such a hard time getting people to enlist or getting troops moved from here to there that no one of their armies could really sustain themselves for long. Regrettably so. That was.
You didn't do that to prolong the war.
Hmm?
If you didn't do that, you would have prolonged the war.
Oh, undoubtedly. Undoubtedly.
You would have been just leading back in.
I'm gonna have to come closer.
I said,
My ears are so shot from artillery.
I just gonna say, if you gave it an exchange, you're just feeding soldiers right back into the war.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that had to, you know, and I mean, by this time, we're down to like, I saw a scene in them as boys and old men, you're true, where's Johnny Reb? To where an old fella answered, he died at Gettysburg. Boys and old men.
And also, they started tapping into the black cult, but trying to get, they had soldiers that were colored, or black.
Oh, yeah, as did we. United States Colored Troops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But back down there, they were like, really, I mean, here they're being punished, and now they're fighting, it's like, they pray for everything.
Well, believe it or not, was all of the black folk down there was a contingency that weren't really that pleased with, you know, believe it or not, they were perfectly content with what was, you know, hey, to each his own, I suppose. But anyway, I don't really want to get into that. That stirs up a whole awareness.
They were good fighters.
Hmm?
They were good fighters.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
They thought they were doing good, but they proved themselves. Oh.
They did one heck of a job on some Confederate troops at Jenkins Ferry. Before you take off, thank you much for coming, your attentiveness. You guys are great.
I'm not gonna
I hope it was informative. And
Yeah, it was
maybe
interesting.
learned a couple of things.
So we give a
And
round of
I know I
applause.
did. Thank you. Oh,
Just a quick announcement.
I don't know, they're all somewhere.
Just a quick announcement, next Thursday is our next Java with Joe at 9 in the morning. Dr.
Okay.
Michael Eula, our county historian, will be presenting. He has a new book coming out called The National is Local, so it's about how national events affected us here in Genesee County. So he'll be announcing that. And this Sunday, if anybody's still interested, we are hosting the Historic Batavia Cemetery's first Tea and Spirits. It's a Victorian tea with visitors from the cemetery coming to share their lives. So it is this Sunday at 2 o'clock is the first one. There'll be a few members of the Ellicott family as well as William Morgan. So if you're interested, just give me a call. Tickets are $25 or $20 if you are a member. And they're also doing one on August 20th and September 17th with other people from the cemetery. So if you're interested, just let me know. And we have a couple guest speakers next month, one on the Gilded Age, which should be interesting, and one on Letchworth State Park. So if you're interested, check everything out on our website, Facebook page. We put everything in all the outlets, or just say hello and I'll be happy to fill you in. So, but thank you again for coming tonight. Please take some cookies, clean up the coffee if there's any left. I don't need them.